2 years ago, I was lost, I was scared, insecure, and shy with zero knowledge of English. I had no idea what my future would look like, everything seemed uncertain, and I felt completely lost. But then everything changed when I made one decision: to learn English. The decision opened doors I never imagined. It helped me find my purpose and build my business. It unlocked career opportunities I once thought were impossible. I even got accepted into universities in the US with thousands of dollars in scholarships. Along the way, I built connections and friendships that completely transformed my life. I want to share with you exactly how I did it from day one, my struggles, my thoughts at the time, and how I overcame challenges. All of it packed into one video. I want you to see yourself in my journey and hopefully get inspired. Most importantly, I want you to realize that I'm not special or different from you. If I became a fluent, confident English speaker, so can you. This is my story. I was sitting in my room overthinking, as usual, about something that happened earlier. Someone had judged me for being too quiet, and in every awkward moment made my face turn red, making things even worse. I was hungry, but that kind of thing happened to me all the time. To distract myself, I decided to watch a movie. At first, I didn't even notice, but the movie was in English. My mind was so focused on my thoughts that I didn't even realize that I was not understanding a word. And when I did realize this, I quickly switched to my native language. And that small action triggered a memory. A week ago, my cousin had left for the United States. She couldn't stop talking about how important learning English was and how she had been studying. I couldn't even talk to her because of how shy I was, but sitting there in my room, I decided to give it a try. For the last 2 years, I had been talking about, moving away and traveling. I didn't feel like I belonged in my hometown. I felt different. I wanted more from life than just live in a small town in the middle of nowhere. It seemed like the perfect time to try something new, so the decision to learn English was perfect. There was just one problem. I had no idea how to start, not a clue. So I did what anyone would do. I searched the internet. Since I didn't know a single word of English, I had to look everything up in my native language. After just a few minutes, I felt so frustrated and overwhelmed that I gave up. It took me less than 10 minutes to quit right after I had decided to start it. The only experience that I had with English in my life was at school, but nobody cared about because not even the teacher was fluent, and we only learned a few words here and there every single day. At that point, I really just tried to speak English once in my life, just because the teacher asked me to. And it was embarrassing. I couldn't even say a single word right. So I closed my laptop feeling hopeless. Learning English felt impossible for me. But what I didn't realize at the time is that that simple moment of doubt was the beginning of everything. I was feeling sad at first, of course, but after thinking about it the whole night, I decided to try again. The idea of becoming fluent in English seemed incredible, and I knew it would be worth it. So I opened my laptop again, and I started to search ways to learn English, to start learning English on the internet again. It was still a little bit overwhelming, but I did find some helpful information this time. A website and a video got my attention from a guy that I didn't even know if he could speak English or not. He was talking about how to make a plan and how to start. It was kind of confusing, but again, I didn't know what to do, so I was going to try this. At that moment, I felt like I was in a sea of information, but I could finally see a way forward. So I made a plan for myself. I would start studying for an hour a day, every single day. I decided I would listen to songs while reading the lyrics, watch beginner level conversations, and write down words that I didn't understand. It felt like a simple enough plan, but I still was not sure if it would work. Moments after that plan, I was reflecting on how I could approach this in a different way so I would not give up anymore. So I started to reflect on how most people give up right after they get everything they want, and that motivated me. The truth was, I didn't know exactly what I was doing, and I was not sure if I could keep up with it, let alone do it 4 times a week. It felt like a big challenge, but again, I had to try, right? I couldn't let doubt stop me from giving a shot, right? And the only reason I was thinking like that is because my desire to learn English at the time was huge. I kept imagining how my life would change if I became a fluent English speaker. So I made a decision to move forward, no matter how uncertain I felt. After weeks, my experience was kind of weird. There were some days that I had a lot of motivation and other days that I didn't do anything. And I felt kind of bad because of that. I thought I wanted this, but I couldn't even study for 1 hour. I couldn't even focus for 1 hour to study English every single day. I thought about giving up, but I didn't. I had to keep going, even though I didn't have any motivation. All I could think about was how my life would change if I became a fluent English speaker. And even though I was thinking about giving up, the feeling was not strong enough to make me do it. At that point, I had already memorized a few words, but I was not even close to speak 3 sentences in English without translating everything in my head from my native language. I had more than 20 pages of words and phrases scattered all over the place. I wanted to finish that 1 hour of studying as fast as I could. All I wanted to do was to relax, watch a movie or a TV show in my native language. Some days I felt so bored that I felt like just studying for 30 minutes before giving up. But even with all these challenges and problems, I still kept going, even though the word give up was in my head all the time. The crazy part, what happened next, was something that I never expected, and it changed everything. On day 100, I still wasn't completely satisfied with the progress I had made. The number of words I had already memorized so far was impressive. And sometimes I could see myself speaking in English, a few sentences here and there, if I really focus on not translating everything in my head first. However, I was not very consistent throughout the days. Some days I could study for 30 minutes on my own, and if I was really motivated, some days I would study for 2 hours. But there were also days that I didn't even study for 1 single minute. Then one day something completely different happened. I decided to watch a different kind of video, a more advanced, conversation in English, and to my surprise, I was able to understand enough to enjoy it. Of course, with subtitles. I had never felt that level of motivation in my life before. What I was doing was actually working. Finally, I noticed that I could understand some words but not others. Usually the words that I didn't understand were surrounded by other words in the sentences that I already knew. What if I write words that I don't know in sentences that I already know? So that is exactly what I started doing. I wrote down words that I didn't know in sentences that I already knew, and I added their meanings. And this moment was a turning point for me. It motivated me so much that I decided to stop consuming or watching anything in my native language. I committed to spend 2 hours a day on this new method and consuming English as much as possible, even if I didn't understand 100%. Since day one, I had never understood English like I was now, so the excitement and the motivation led me to practice even more. I didn't know what the outcome would be in the end of the day, but I was excited to find out. So the next 100 days doing that was a turning point for me. I was able to focus and actually make a lot of progress. I was happy every time I would watch or read something. I would understand more and more. But then something completely changed again. It seemed like my excitement was not going to last, and after days like that, it was going away. I didn't have any motivation left, so I spent 10 days without doing anything. And eventually, I think you can guess what happened. I gave up. For 4 months after everything I had been through, I forgot about English. I didn't know what happened, but it seems like I didn't want that anymore. Until I was browsing through YouTube and I find one video that completely changed everything for me again. The video was titled, "Living in Your Small Town is Killing Your Potential." The video was in English, so that meant I couldn't understand everything, but I was able to understand enough to get the contest. The video made a motivation come back, and I started to remember my goals and dreams all over again. My childhood came in my memories, and I saw my younger self looking at me after I had given up. I couldn't let that be the end, so I asked myself, what am I doing? I have to learn English, otherwise it's gonna be so much harder for me. So I picked up my old notebook and I started to come up with a completely new plan. This time was different. I knew English way more than I did on day one. And I knew I would still keep watching things in English, only in English, because I didn't want to do it in my native language anymore. And I knew I would still keep doing that. But now I would start practicing a lot of speaking and writing. Methods like journaling, shadowing exercises, asking and answering your own questions helped me a lot at this stage. They were simple, but extremely effective. There was a huge problem now. I was working 8 hours every single day, sometimes even 12 hours. I didn't know how I was going to do this. So I asked myself, what am I going to do? And I didn't know, but I had to figure it out. I was already waking up really early because I had to go to work like at 7 a.m., 6 a.m. So my only option was to wake up even earlier. At this time, I was really into self-improvement, so I was trying to make my life better in every aspect. One day, I learned about the method Eat the Frog. It's basically a method that teaches you how to delay gratification. You have to do the hard things first, then the easy parts of your day, you can do it later, not the opposite, because it's easier to procrastinate like that, and most people do that. That's why they procrastinate a lot. I would wake up between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. to do my most important task in English because I knew that if I left them for later in the day, I probably would not do them or it wouldn't be as effective. I would write and speak for an hour and a half and read and listen for an hour just to get my mind going. Throughout the day, I would listen and read other things between breaks at work or on my way to work or coming back home. It was going to be hard, but I didn't care. I had to do this and I had to do it fast. This moment in my life started to shape my identity and discipline. I knew that I would become a different person even if I didn't become fluent in English after all the things that I was going through. After a few days, I realized how hard it was to wake up that early every single day. Some days I didn't want to do it, but I kept going no matter what. There was even one day that I fell asleep on my computer. I didn't even care though, I just left. These were times when the motivation was through the roof. No matter what happened, I was going to do it. Of course, some days I would do everything and then other days I wouldn't do nothing, but I was always there trying my best. At this time, because of my obsession with traveling the world and moving away from my hometown, I decided to apply to universities in the US. It was the perfect decision for me. But as a lot of people know, it's not a very easy process. How am I supposed to do this? Working full-time, studying English, waking up really early in the morning. And if I wanted to apply to universities there, that meant I would have to practice my English even more. I know this might sound crazy for some people, but the amount of discipline and determination I developed during this time, it was a surprising for me. It changed my life forever. I really wanted this, so my only option was to prepare my application at night. This process of studying English, working full-time, and preparing my application, even though hard, only made me stronger. Writing my essays, spend hours searching for college that gave scholarships for international students, and studying for the test only made me progress even faster with my English. After months of ups and downs, which I thought about giving up a few times, I realized how much my English had progressed. When I was practicing my speaking, even though I had to stop a few times, translate a little bit in my head first, and I was making a lot of mistakes, I was satisfied and motivated to keep going. The crazy part is that my speaking skills completely changed after I met one person. A person that I never thought I would meet in my life. Never. I was terrified. Even though I had been speaking English a lot over the last few months, I had never spoken to anyone. Just the thought of it made me scared. I knew English way more than I did when I started, but I was still a shy and introverted person, even in my native language. I still had these doubts, excuses, fears, and beliefs holding me back, even after all the time that I had practiced already. My university applications were getting better every single day. My writing and my reading skills were getting better too. But I couldn't get past this problem. How am I going to speak with someone? I was too shy to even talk to people online. But then one day, I got a text. My cousin was coming back to Brazil and she was bringing an American with her. I was terrified. I knew I would have to speak English with someone one day, but not like this. For the next few weeks, all I could think about was this. And every time I thought about it, my anxiety grew. The day before, I was so nervous that I could barely focus on anything. Imagine having to speak in English for the first time with someone and knowing that your family had high expectations because they knew how hard you were practicing. You know this if you live in a place that 99% of people don't speak English. If they find out that you know English, that you can speak, they start asking a lot of questions that get, excited. It's crazy. But here you go. The day came and my heart was pounding so fast that I thought it would explode. As much as I didn't want to do it, something felt different that day. I told myself that I had to do it no matter what. I had to take action. So I was there. I had no option anymore. I just had to do it. I kept walking with my sweaty hands and with my legs saying no and my mind saying yes. I just went for it. And the moment I said, hey, to the person, I knew I would have to keep going no matter what. Even though I paused a lot, I was, translating in my head first. I made a lot of mistakes. The person was really respectful. He told me he was surprised of how good my English was and that he admired me for trying. And during the conversation, I asked simple questions like, what do you do or how do you like here? It wasn't perfect, but he smiled and answered patiently. That gave me the motivation to keep going. My whole life I was scared, especially after I started to learn English. I was even more scared. But everything was for nothing. Just an illusion made by my mind. That moment completely changed me, especially my mindset. I didn't want to feel like that again, scared all the time. So after that date, everything was different. I started asking myself why I was so scared. Why did I let my doubts stop me when, the conversation that I had in English was better than most I had ever had in my own native language. That's when I realized something important. Making mistakes was not as scary as I thought. The key to growing is speaking. Even if it's not perfect. If you're scared to speak in English, I get it. I felt the same way too. But trust me, just starting, even if it's not perfect, is way better than waiting until you feel ready. You'll surprise yourself. The first conversation that I had in English taught me that fear holds you back. And once you face it, you realize that it was not as hard as you thought it was. After that day, I started asking myself questions every single day. Why I had these fears and doubts when the first conversation that I had in English was better than most I had ever had in my native language, like I said. And what I did next was probably one of the most important parts of becoming a fluent and confident English speaker. Something that most people take a long time to figure it out, or they never do. The months after my first interaction in English were probably the best so far. The amount of discipline that I had developed was crazy. But of course, I was nowhere close to speaking English fluently with confidence yet. I was extremely introvert and I wanted to change that. I started practicing speaking more than ever. Each day I felt like I was improving. Eventually I started messaging a few native speakers after meeting a few of them. Especially the guy that I talked for the first time in English. The way that he treated me day by day made me way more confident express myself in English, even through messages. But everything turned around when I received an email. I had already been applying for colleges and scholarships, so my application was more than ready. The email said that I was selected as one of the finalists for a full scholarship. To proceed, I would have to go through an interview. No. I was already anxious after I read that. How am I supposed to go through an interview? At that point, I could write well, read decently, but speaking was a whole different story. An interview for something as important as studying abroad for free was a lot of pressure. I had just 2 weeks to prepare it, and I was nervous every single day. I could barely eat. I tried to practice as much as I could before the big day arrived. Finally, it was time. A 30-minute online interview. That's it. Here we go. When you are somewhere and you just want to get out of there as soon as possible, but you can't. That is exactly how I felt. I just wanted to turn my laptop off, but I knew I couldn't do that because my future was in my own hands. So it went about as I expected. I made some mistakes and I paused a lot before answering some questions, but everyone was really patient and respectful. However, that was not what made me feel bad. It was something else. Why I was so nervous after all I had been through, speaking English. Being nervous for an interview like that is normal, but at that level, when you cannot even eat, it's not normal. I spent the rest of the day thinking about it, and all I could think about was, the feeling that I had when I had my first interaction in English. And after a few minutes, after a few hours, I found my answer. Even though all my interactions in English so far had been great, I felt like running away from them every single time. That's when I realized it's not about trying different techniques or practicing more. What would make me speak English the way that I wanted was not just more practice, was changing my mindset, my beliefs, fears, excuses, and doubts. Throughout this journey from day one, how many times had I doubted myself, felt fear, made excuses, given up? I had all these limiting beliefs, like I'm not good enough. But imagine not having these problems. Imagine how free I would speak in English. How much easier my journey would have been, or even have them, but don't allow them to affect, me as much. I knew the only way to get rid of these problems was to change my beliefs and face every uncomfortable situation, no matter how small it was. So slowly, I began to transform my mind. In the first few weeks, it was extremely hard. I was focusing on identifying all my beliefs, fears, doubts, and excuses, and why they were holding me back, writing them down on a paper in details. This was a very important process, and I had to do it right. And for every problem, I would take massive action to overcome them. If I didn't want to speak with someone for some reason, I would speak with someone. If I didn't want to write or read, I would write and read. If I didn't want to practice, I would practice even more. As I went through this process, I started making feary excuses, practicing even more and facing my fears. I even started to talk with people online for the first time. I was extremely nervous, but every time I did, I became less and less nervous. I started to realize something. Confidence in English was not only about English, it was about all the other aspects of life too. So I started taking every action I could to change my life, my health, my social life, my career. It all blended together with the progress I had already made, and it only made my English better. But like anything in life, not everything happens as we expect. After so many months on this journey, I wanted to share my story. I thought it was unique and it could help people who were in the same position that I had been in. But it was one of the hardest things to accept, that I would have to put myself out there and face being judged if I wanted to do this. I had never talked to a camera before, especially in English. My first attempts were horrible, and I told myself that I would never post them. How many times I thought about giving up? 10, 20? I felt like I would never be able to do this, but because I had gotten used to face my fears, I wouldn't give up that easily. That's when I recorded my first video in English. I couldn't even look at the camera, but I did it anyway. Then one more, and one more. And by the time I had recorded my 10th video, people started resonating with me, and I had the best feeling ever. For the first time, I felt completely fluent in English, and even though I knew I would get, nervous in certain situations, I also knew I would face them no matter what. That made me even more confident speaking in English. Creating this channel was one of the best things that I have ever done. Helping people and sharing my stories and knowledge in English made my confidence skyrocket, and it changed my life forever. And the crazy thing is that it all started with one decision: to learn English. Well, in the end, it was all worth it. The frustration, the sleepless nights, the fears, even though it was hard in the beginning, it was worth it. What a journey it's been. Going through this process of learning English changed my life forever, because it was not just about learning a language. It was about learning the value of hard work, building confidence, facing my fears, and truly starting to believe in myself. And as you know, I'm not perfect or better than you. You've seen the struggles I have faced, and sometimes I still go through them, trying to improve a little bit more every single day. I'm just a guy that wanted to achieve fluency in English, and after everything I went through, everything changed along the way. So if I can do it, there's a 100% chance that you can too. I believe in you, and you should believe in yourself more, not only in English, but in life. See you in the next one.